Most people will never tell you they don't want you to succeed. They will smile. They will encourage you. They will say they are happy for you. And yet something changes the moment you begin to grow. You feel it. The energy becomes different. The conversations become strange. The support becomes quieter. The people who once cheered for your dreams suddenly become experts at explaining why those dreams are unrealistic. Not because they hate you. That would be easier to understand. The truth is far more painful. Many people want you to do well, just not better than them. That is the hidden wound of human nature. As long as you remain where you are familiar, comfortable, predictable. But the moment you begin becoming someone they are not becoming, you remind them of everything they abandoned inside themselves. And very few people can tolerate that reminder. You think your success threads their position. Often it threads their excuses. That is why some of the strongest resistance you will ever face comes not from strangers, but from people who know your name. There is an uncomfortable reality that most people discover too late. The people who watched you struggle are not always prepared to watch you rise. Because your rise forces them to confront their own choices. And human beings will do almost anything to avoid confronting themselves. A man once spent years complaining about his life. Every day he spoke about opportunities he never received. Every day he blamed circumstances. One day his closest friend decided to change. He woke up earlier, worked harder, studied when others slept. Slowly his life improved. Do you know what happened? The first man did not become inspired. He became irritated. Because their existence of one disciplined person destroyed 1,000 excuses. The success of another person is often a mirror that exposes our own surrender. Most people do not fear your failure. Your failure makes them comfortable. Your success makes them question themselves. And questions are dangerous, especially for people who have spent years running from the answers. This is why you must understand something important. Not every smile is support. Not every compliment is encouragement. Not every friend wants to see your transformation. Some people only love the version of you that needed them. The version that doubted itself. The version that stayed small. The version that asked for permission. But growth changes relationships. It always has. It always will. A bamboo shoot spends years underground before anyone sees movement. For a long time, nothing appears to happen. Then suddenly it rises rapidly toward the sky. People admire the growth. What they do not see are the years spent building roots. Your life is no different. When you begin strengthening yourself internally, people notice changes before they understand them. You become calmer, less reactive, less desperate for approval, more selective with your energy. And strangely enough, some people become uncomfortable. Not because you changed for the worse, because you changed without their permission. That is a truth few people are willing to admit. Many relationships are built on invisible agreements. Stay the same. Stay available. Stay insecure. Stay predictable. The moment you break that agreement, resistance appears. Not always openly. Sometimes it comes disguised as concern. Are you sure you should do that? You've changed. Don't get carried away. Be realistic. Listen carefully. Sometimes these words come from genuine care. But often they come from fear. Not fear for you. Fear of losing the version of you they understood. Fear of watching you enter a world they cannot enter. Fear of being left behind. Human beings rarely attack growth directly. They attack confidence. They attack momentum. They attack beliefs. Because if they can make you doubt yourself, they never have to confront themselves. A Shaolin master once said that when a tree begins growing taller than the forest around it, the wind reaches it first. The tree is not being punished. It is simply becoming visible. The higher you rise, the more resistance you encounter. Not because you are wrong. Because you are noticeable. Many people interpret resistance as a sign to stop. The wise understand it as evidence of movement. If nobody reacts to your growth, perhaps you are not growing. Real transformation disrupts patterns. And disrupted patterns make people uncomfortable. Think about your own lives. How many times did someone support your dream until it started becoming real? At first, they celebrated the idea. Ideas are safe. Ideas threaten nobody. A dream written in a notebook changes nothing. But action changes everything. The moment effort becomes visible, reactions begin. Because now the dream has a chance. And a dream with a chance becomes dangerous. Not dangerous to the world. Dangerous to those who abandon their own. The world applauds ambition until ambition starts winning. That is why so many people unconsciously sabotage others. Not through hatred. Through discomfort. A friend forgets to encourage you. A relative constantly points out risks. A coworker minimizes your achievements. A partner becomes distant when you become confident. The actions seem small, but the message underneath is powerful. Return to who you were. Return to the version that made us comfortable. Return to the familiar. But life does not reward familiarity. Life rewards growth. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He knew that people act according to their nature. Some will misunderstand you. Some will envy you. Some will doubt you. Not because of your actions, because of their own perceptions. The Stoic does not waste energy demanding understanding. He simply continues walking. This is where many people lose themselves. They become obsessed with convincing everyone, explaining themselves, defending every decision, seeking approval from people who already decided not to give it. What a tragic use of life. Imagine carrying a heavy stone up a mountain while simultaneously trying to persuade everyone watching that the stone is worth carrying. You exhaust yourself twice. First from the climb, then from the explanations. The warrior learns a different lesson. Silence, movement, results, nothing more. A river never argues with rocks. It flows, and eventually the rocks surrender. One of the greatest signs of maturity is realizing that understanding is not required. Support is not required. Permission is not required. You can move forward without all three. In fact, some of your greatest breakthroughs will happen the moment you stop waiting for them. Because the truth is this: the people who secretly don't want you to succeed are not your biggest obstacle. Their doubt is not your prison. Their fear is not your limitation. Their discomfort is not your destiny. The real danger is something much closer. Something much quieter. Something living inside your own mind. And if you do not recognize it, it will stop you long before any enemy ever can. The greatest obstacle to your success is rarely another person. It is the voice that appears after they plant a seed of doubt. The comment, the criticism, the subtle dismissal, the raised eyebrow, the silence after you share a dream. Those moments do not destroy you. What destroys you is what happens next. You carry them home. You replay them at night. You turn someone else's uncertainty into your own. And before long, you begin arguing against yourself. This is how many people abandon their path. Not because they were defeated. Because they slowly joined the opposition. The strange thing about human beings is that we can survive enormous hardship. We can survive loss, rejection, failure, loneliness, but we struggle to survive persistent self-doubt. Because self-doubt attacks from inside the walls. The Stoics understood this long ago. An enemy outside the fortress can only do so much. An enemy inside the gate is far more dangerous. And many people spend years strengthening the wrong defenses. They learn how to respond to critics, how to deal with difficult people, how to avoid toxic environments. Yet they never learn how to manage their own mind. So the world barely has to touch them. A single negative opinion becomes a storm. A single rejection becomes proof of inadequacy. A single setback becomes evidence they should quit. The most dangerous prison is the one built from your own conclusions. Think about how often this happens. Someone doubts your ability. Then you start doubting it too. Someone questions your worth. Then you begin questioning it yourself. Someone acts as though your dream is impossible. Soon you begin collecting evidence to support their belief. Not yours. Theirs. Human beings have a hidden tendency to seek confirmation. Once a doubt enters the mind, we start looking for reasons it must be true. That is why a single insult can outweigh 10 compliments. Why one failure can overshadow years of progress. Why one person's disbelief can suddenly feel bigger than your own vision. And this is exactly where many lives become smaller. Not through catastrophe. Through surrender. Slow, quiet, invisible surrender. A Shaolin monk was once asked why so many people fail to change. His answer was simple. Because they listen to every voice except the one that matters. Most people spend their lives becoming experts in other people's opinions. Very few become students of their own soul. That answer contains a painful truth. Many people do not know what they actually want. They know what their parents wanted, what society expects, what friends approve of, what strangers admire. But remove all those voices and silence the noise. And suddenly they feel lost. Because they have spent years living externally. Never internally. This is why criticism hurts so much. Not because criticism is powerful. Because identity is weak. A tree with deep roots does not negotiate with the wind. It remains standing. A tree without roots trembles at every gust. The problem is rarely the storm. The problem is what exists beneath the surface. So ask yourself something uncomfortable. If everyone approved of your path, would you still walk it? If nobody applauded your success, would you still pursue it? If nobody noticed your growth, would you continue growing? These questions reveal everything. Because true strength begins where external validation ends. And that is where most people become trapped. They want freedom, but they also want approval. They want independence, but they also want acceptance. They want greatness, but they do not want anyone to feel uncomfortable because of it. Unfortunately, life rarely offers both. The higher you climb, the fewer people will understand your journey. Not because they are bad people, because they are standing on different mountains. The path to your future often requires leaving the crowd that recognizes your past. That realization hurts. Especially when the crowd contains people you love. Family, friends, partners, people who once mattered deeply. Sometimes they do not oppose your success intentionally. They simply cannot see beyond their own limitations. A man trapped in a small room eventually believes the room is the world. Show him the ocean and he may call it impossible. Not because the ocean does not exist. Because it exceeds his experience. Many people judge your potential through the lens of their own fears. And fear has poor eyesight. Fear sees danger where opportunity exists. Fear sees failure before effort begins. Fear sees loss before growth. Fear sees impossibility before action. If you are not careful, you will borrow these fears. You will inherit limitations that were never yours. You will spend years fighting battles that belong to someone else. The warrior refuses this inheritance. He listens, observes, learns, but he does not blindly adopt. That distinction changes everything. Because wisdom requires openness. But strength requires discernment. Not every opinion deserves space in your mind. Not every voice deserves influence. Not every criticism deserves attention. One of the most liberating lessons in life is realizing that people can be wrong about you. Very wrong. History is filled with examples. Inventors mocked. Artists rejected. Thinkers ridiculed. Warriors underestimated. Visionaries dismissed. At the beginning, almost nobody believed. At the end, everyone claimed they knew all along. Human nature has not changed. People trust results more than potential. They celebrate what already exists. They doubt what is still becoming. That is why the early stages of any transformation feel lonely. You can see something others cannot. You can feel a future they do not understand. You can sense possibilities invisible to everyone around you. And yet you must keep moving. Without proof, without certainty, without applause. This is where discipline becomes sacred. Not because discipline guarantees success. Because discipline protects belief. Motivation comes and goes. Confidence rises and falls. Emotions change like weather. Discipline remains. Every morning you continue. Every evening you continue. Every setback you continue. Every criticism you continue. Every doubt you continue. A sword is not forged in comfort. Steel becomes strong because it survives fire repeatedly. Likewise, character is built through repeated exposure to discomfort. Not once, again and again. The people who secretly don't want you to succeed unknowingly provide part of that fire. Their doubt strengthens your conviction. Their criticism strengthens your clarity. Their resistance strengthens your resilience. If you use it correctly. Because suffering alone does not create strength. Many people suffer and become bitter. Strength comes from transforming suffering into wisdom. That is a choice. Always a choice. Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal, opposition, political enemies, false accusations. Yet he repeatedly returned to one principle: you control your response. Nothing more, nothing less. The modern mind resists this lesson. It wants control over outcomes, control over people, control over opinions, control over circumstances. But peace begins when control becomes smaller, and responsibility becomes greater. You cannot control who doubts you. You cannot control who leaves. You cannot control who secretly hopes you fail. But there is something else you cannot control forever either. The mask. The mask you wear to gain acceptance. The mask you wear to avoid rejection. The mask you wear to keep everyone comfortable. Sooner or later, success demands that mask be removed. And when that moment arrives, many people discover a truth they were never prepared to face. A truth that changes every relationship they have. Sooner or later, every person reaches a moment where they must choose approval or authenticity. The tragedy is that many never realize they are making this choice. They believe they are simply being polite, keeping the peace, avoiding conflict, being reasonable. But beneath those explanations is often a deeper reality. They are abandoning themselves to remain acceptable to others. And every time this happens, something inside them grows weaker. Not visibly, not immediately, but slowly, like a blade left exposed to rain. Rust forms one layer at a time. The soul works the same way. Each time you silence your truth to protect someone else's comfort, a small piece of your strength disappears. Each time you shrink your ambition to avoid making others uncomfortable, a small piece of your future disappears. Each time you betray your own path for acceptance, a small piece of your peace disappears. Then one day you wake up exhausted. Not because life is hard. Because you have been carrying a version of yourself that was never real. The heaviest burden is pretending to be smaller than you are. Many people live this way for years. Some live this way for decades. They become experts at adaptation. Experts at pleasing. Experts at reading the room. Experts at becoming whoever others need them to be. But they never become themselves. And that is why success often feels threatening to the people around you. Success is not merely achievement. Success is evidence of self-trust. It is proof that you stopped asking everyone else who you should become. And there are people who feel deeply uncomfortable around anyone who trusts themselves. Because self-trust is contagious. It awakens forgot questions. Questions many have spent years avoiding. What if I settled? What if I gave up too early? What if I am capable of more? What if the life I complain about is actually the life I chose? These questions can shake a person to their core. So instead of facing them, many direct their attention toward you, toward your decisions, your ambition, your changes, your growth, anything except themselves. This is one reason criticism often increases when progress increases. The more certain you become, the more uncertain others may feel. A monk once sat beside a river with his student. The student asked why people become hostile when someone improves their life. The monk pointed toward the water. The river flowed calmly around rocks, branches, and fallen trees. Then he said the river never insults the obstacle. It simply keeps moving. The student waited for more. But the lesson was complete. The river wastes no energy demanding permission. No energy seeking approval. No energy convincing the rocks to cooperate. It flows because flowing is its nature. How much suffering would disappear from your life if you lived the same way? How much energy would return if you stopped trying to convince everyone? How much peace would emerge if you stopped explaining your growth? Most people do not realize how much of their exhaustion comes from negotiation. Negotiating their dreams. Negotiating their boundaries. Negotiating their worth. Negotiating their identity. They spend years asking the world for permission to become themselves. Permission that never arrives. Because the world is busy asking the same question. Imagine a room full of people waiting for approval. No one moving. No one acting. No one becoming. That is how many lives are lost. Not through failure. Through hesitation. Through waiting. Through endless permission seeking. Freedom begins the moment you stop asking others to authorize your existence. That sentence may sound simple. It is not. For many people, it is terrifying. Because if nobody else decides your value, then responsibility returns to you. If nobody else defines your worth, then you must define it yourself. If nobody else controls your direction, then every step becomes your responsibility. This is where real adulthood begins. Not at a certain age. Not with a job. Not with marriage. Not with status. Real adulthood begins when you stop outsourcing your identity. And that moment changes everything. Because suddenly criticism loses power. Not all power, but much of it. You still hear it. You simply stop obeying it. You still notice rejection. You simply stop interpreting it as truth. You still encounter doubt. You simply refuse to build your home inside it. The Stoics called this the inner fortress. A place within yourself that cannot be controlled by external circumstances. Most people search for safety in the world. The Stoic searches for stability within. Because the world is unpredictable. People change. Relationships end. Opportunities disappear. Fortunes rise and fall. Health comes and goes. Nothing outside remains permanent. Yet many build their entire sense of self upon things that constantly change. Then they wonder why anxiety follows them. Anxiety often grows where identity depends on unstable foundations. Their opinions of others. Their approval of others. Their attention of others. The presence of others. Remove those things and the entire structure shakes. That is why inner strength is not a luxury. It is a necessity. A warrior who depends on favorable weather is not prepared for battle. Likewise, a person who depends on approval is not prepared for life. A Shaolin master once described discipline as learning to stand alone without feeling abandoned. Read that again. Learning to stand alone without feeling abandoned. Most people can stand alone physically. Very few can do it emotionally. The moment support disappears, panic appears. The moment validation disappears, insecurity appears. The moment applause disappears, motivation disappears. That is dependency, not strength. Strength is continuing when nobody is watching. Continuing when nobody believes. Continuing when nobody understands. Continuing when nobody claps. The bamboo does not stop growing because the forest ignores it. The mountain does not shrink because nobody admires it. The sun does not ask permission before it rises. Nature teaches the same lesson repeatedly. Become what you are meant to become, whether anyone approves or not. And yet there is another uncomfortable truth, perhaps the most painful one of all. Sometimes the people who secretly don't want you to succeed are not strangers, not coworkers, not acquaintances, not critics on the outside. Sometimes they are the people closest to your heart. And learning how to face that reality without becoming bitter is one of the hardest lessons a person will ever learn. One of the most painful moments in life is realizing that love and support are not always the same thing. Many people assume they are. They are not. Someone can love you and still fear your growth. Someone can care about you and still discourage your dreams. Someone can want the best for you and still try to keep you small. Not because they are evil, because they are human. And human beings often confuse familiarity with safety. When you change, you disrupt familiarity. When you grow, you challenge old patterns. When you become stronger, you force relationships to evolve. Not everyone is prepared for that evolution. This realization breaks many hearts, especially when it involves family. A parent, a sibling, a lifelong friend, a partner, people whose approval once meant everything. You expect strangers to misunderstand you. You do not expect it from those closest to you. Yet life repeatedly teaches the same lesson. The people who love you are not always capable of understanding the person you are becoming. And understanding is not a requirement for your growth. That sentence is difficult to accept, because a part of us still wants everyone to come along, to celebrate, to support, to approve. But reality is often quieter than that. Sometimes growth is a lonely road. Not because you are abandoned, because transformation creates distance before it creates alignment. A caterpillar and a butterfly cannot share the same life. At some point one must change. And change always creates tension. The moment you become difficult to control, you become difficult to keep. Many people discover this the hard way. The people who once enjoyed your company suddenly become uncomfortable. Not because you became arrogant, because you became unavailable for manipulation. You stopped saying yes to everything. You stopped apologizing for existing. You stopped sacrificing your peace to maintain relationships. You stopped carrying responsibilities that never belonged to you. And suddenly the relationship changes. Why? Because unhealthy dynamics often depend on one person remaining weak, one person remaining guilty, one person remaining dependent. The moment strength enters their equation, the old arrangement begins to collapse. Human psychology is fascinating in this way. People often say they want honesty, until honesty challenges them. They say they want authenticity, until authenticity creates boundaries. They say they want growth, until growth changes access. This is why personal transformation reveals relationships. It does not create problems. It exposes them. The cracks were already there. Growth simply shines light into them. A blacksmith forging a sword does not create weaknesses in the steel. The fire reveals them. The same is true of life. Success reveals. Strength reveals. Confidence reveals. Discipline reveals. And what they reveal is not always pleasant. Some relationships deepen. Others dissolve. Some people celebrate your rise. Others resent it. Some become allies. Others become observers from a distance. Such is life. The wise do not resist this process. They understand it. A monk living high in the mountains once received a visit from an old friend. The friend asked why he no longer spent time with many of the people he once knew. The monk smiled and pointed toward the mountain path. Below them the trail narrowed as it climbed higher. Then he said, "The mountain did not reject them. The climb did what a profound truth. The mountain welcomes everyone. Few choose the ascent. The same thing happens in life. Your path becomes narrower as your standards become higher. Not because you think you are better than others. Because fewer people are willing to make the journey. Fewer people choose discipline. Fewer people choose accountability. Fewer people choose self-mastery. Fewer people choose truth over comfort. And when you choose those things, your circle naturally changes. Many mistake this for loss. Often it is alignment. The older your soul becomes, the less crowded your path becomes. At first, solitude feels frightening. Humans are social creatures. We naturally seek connection, belonging, acceptance, community. There is nothing wrong with that. The problem arises when belonging costs self-respect. When acceptance requires self-betrayal. When connection demands the abandonment of truth. That price is too high. Far too high. Yet millions pay it every day. They remain in relationships that drain them. Remain in environments that diminish them. Remain in patterns that weaken them. All because they fear being alone. But there is something more painful than loneliness. Losing yourself. Many people spend years avoiding solitude, only to discover they have become strangers to themselves. Their opinions are borrowed. Their goals are borrowed. Their values are borrowed. Their identity is borrowed. Everything belongs to someone else. Nothing belongs to them. That is not living. That is existing. The Shaolin tradition teaches a powerful lesson. A warrior trains alone not because he hates people. Because solitude reveals what company conceals. When there is no audience, truth appears. When there is no applause, motives become visible. When there is no distraction, the mind reveals itself. This is why so many fear silence. Silence exposes. And exposure can be uncomfortable. Especially if you have spent years avoiding yourself. Yet within that silence lies extraordinary freedom. Because eventually something remarkable happens. You stop needing everyone to understand you. You stop needing everyone to support you. You stop needing everyone to agree with you. You stop carrying the impossible burden of universal acceptance. And for the first time in years, you can breathe. Really breathe. Not because life became easier. Because you became lighter. You stopped dragging expectations everywhere you went. You stopped demanding understanding from people incapable of giving it. You stopped trying to force alignment where none existed. And in that surrender, peace begins. Not perfect peace, but real peace. The kind that cannot be purchased. The kind that cannot be gifted. The kind that must be earned. However, there is one final lesson most people never fully understand. A lesson that separates those who become bitter from those who become free. Because when you realize that some people secretly don't want you to succeed, there are two paths available. One path leads to resentment. The other leads to wisdom. And choosing between them may be one of the most important decisions of your entire life. When people discover that not everyone wants them to succeed, their first reaction is often disappointment. Their second reaction is anger. And if they are not careful, anger slowly becomes bitterness. Bitterness is seductive. It feels like strength. It feels like protection. It feels like justice. But it is none of those things. Bitterness is simply pain that has overstayed its welcome. It convinces you that holding on is power. In reality, holding on is the chain. Many people spend years mentally arguing with those who doubted them. Years trying to prove something. Years imagining conversations. Years replaying betrayals. Years carrying wounds long after the battle ended. Meanwhile, life continues moving forward. Opportunities pass. Peace waits. Freedom calls. But they remain trapped in yesterday. Not by other people's. By their attachment to what happened. This is the final trap. Not the criticism. Not the rejection. not the lack of support. Their attachment, their refusal to release it. Marcus Aurelius understood something that most people never learn. Other people's actions belong to them. Your response belongs to you. That distinction changes everything. Because the moment you truly understand it, blame begins losing its grip. You stop asking, why did they do this to me? And you start asking, what will I do now? One question creates victims. The other creates leaders. One looks backward. The other moves forward. The moment responsibility enters your life, resentment begins to leave it. That does not mean what happened was fair. It does not mean betrayal was acceptable. It does not mean disappointment did not hurt. It means your future is too valuable to remain chained to someone else's limitations. Think about this. The people who doubted you. The people who underestimated you. The people who secretly hoped you would fail. They have already taken enough from you. Why give them your peace as well? Why allow them to occupy space inside your mind? Why continue carrying what they have already forgot? A man carrying burning coals hurts only himself. Bitterness works the same way. The person who suffers most is the one holding it. A Shaolin teacher once told his students, if you carry every stone thrown at you, you will never reach the mountain. How many stones are you carrying right now? Old betrayals, old insults, old disappointments, old rejections, old failures. Some of them happened years ago. Yet they still influence your decisions, still shape your emotions, still affect your confidence, still steal your energy. Imagine how much lighter your journey would become if you finally put them down. Not because they were insignificant, because you are no longer willing to carry them. That is forgiveness in its deepest form. Not excusing, not forgetting, releasing. Freedom is not found in changing the past. Freedom is found in refusing to live inside it. And once you reach this point, something remarkable begins to happen. The people who doubted you become less important. The people who criticized you become less important. The people who misunderstood you become less important. Not because they changed, because your focus changed. You become occupied with something greater. Your own growth, your own discipline, your own peace, your own purpose. A river does not stop flowing to explain itself. A mountain does not defend its height. The sun does not apologize for shining. Nature never seeks permission to fulfill its purpose. Why should you? There comes a moment in every mature life when external approval loses its throne. Not completely. You still appreciate kindness, support, connection, love, but you no longer depend upon them for identity. You no longer require them to move forward. That is freedom. Real freedom. The kind many people search for but rarely find. Because freedom is not doing whatever you want. Freedom is no longer being controlled by what others think of what you want. Read that carefully. It may be one of the most important lessons you ever learn. Most people are imprisoned by invisible expectations. Their expectations of family, friends, society, past versions of themselves. When those expectations disappear, life becomes astonishingly simple. Not easy. Simple. Wake up. Do the work. Improve yourself. Protect your peace. Remain honest. Remain disciplined. Remain calm. Repeat. Day after day. Year after year. This is how extraordinary lives are built. Not through constant validation. Through consistent action. Not through universal support. Through unwavering commitment. Not through perfect circumstances. Through resilient character. The strongest person in the room is often the one who no longer needs their room's approval. That strength cannot be purchased. It cannot be inherited. It cannot be borrowed. It must be developed. One decision at a time. One boundary at a time. One difficult day at a time. One courageous step at a time. And eventually, something beautiful happens. You stop chasing success to prove people wrong. You start pursuing excellence because it reflects who you are. This changes everything. Because proving people wrong has an ending. Becoming your best self does not. One is fueled by ego, the other by purpose. One creates exhaustion, the other creates fulfillment. The wise choose purpose. Always. So if you have felt unsupported, keep walking. If you have been misunderstood, keep walking. If people doubted you, keep walking. If people secretly wanted you to fail, keep walking. Not with anger, not with resentment, not with the need to prove anything. Walk with dignity. Walk with discipline. Walk with peace. Because the greatest victory is not becoming successful enough to silence your critics. The greatest victory is becoming so grounded within yourself that their voices no longer matter. And when that day arrives, you will understand something few people ever do. Your power was never in their approval. Your power was never in their support. Your power was never in their belief. Your power was always in your ability to continue. Quietly, calmly, relentlessly, no matter who doubted you, no matter who left, no matter who secretly hoped you would fail. Stand firm. Remain calm. Continue your path. If this message resonated with you, share below the lesson that spoke to you most. And if you choose to continue this journey of wisdom, discipline, and inner strength, walk with us by subscribing to Silent Strength. The path is not crowded, but it is worth walking.